My fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guests. How many of you experience conflict in your life? Okay, let's reverse that. Is there anybody in this room who does not have any conflict in their life? Because we want to know what the secret is. So I see we all have something in commonality. We all experience conflict. Now, the question begs, is conflict necessarily a negative? Not necessarily. Conflict could be a very good thing because it could lead to solutions to issues that have been percolating in the background for a while. It all depends on how we address the conflict. So that's why I'm here today, to talk about different strategies on addressing conflict. But first, let's baseline conflict. Let's see if we can all come to a similar agreement as to what exactly is conflict. So conflict, one, it pertains to the opposing ideas and actions of different entities. Now here's the thing. We are a country, we're a brand new country, right? We're celebrating 150 this year. It's in the grand scheme, on a global scale, if you compare us to European countries, we're a young country. Many of us, me, come from somewhere else. And so we come, and this is the key, this is where potential conflict can arise. We come with different backgrounds, with different ways of thinking, with different ideas, and so we meet in a place like Toronto, and there's potential for clash of ideas. So that's one way a conflict can occur, when we have opposing ideas. And I'm sure all of you have seen that. Secondly, well, the basic one, between partners. I've experienced that all the time. Disagreement or an argument, usually a protracted one, could be as simple as, Dave, you're spending too much time playing soccer, and I'm not getting the opportunity to step out as much as you. Again, conflict. Or it could be, do we have any parents in the room like me? The conflict between parent and child. Typically, what's such a conflict? Why aren't you cleaning up your room? Okay, like it's as simple as that. And invariably, I will get a response. Well, Dad, I have too much homework to do. I just don't have time to clean my room. And besides, I'm the one that's living in this room. Now, as a parent, you might want to immediately flip, but perhaps there's another way to deal with a situation like that. We'll come back to that. First image represents, two kids screaming at each other, conflict. They're not sure, one wants something, the other one wants an opposing idea, something opposing, and so they're screaming at each other. Why? Because they do not, as yet, have the skill set to be able to resolve conflict. Guess who's modeling conflict? Guess who? Us. We're modeling conflict and conflict resolution. It's us, as the adults in the room, as the leaders in our community, as workers in our workplace. We're the ones that are modeling resolution. Yep. Husband and wife arguing over something that hasn't been resolved for a while. The third image is one of a team going at each other over perhaps a project not meeting its deadline. That might be a common scenario. But there are other ways to resolve. That happens all the time. When I did my project management course at Ryerson, one of the first things that was pointed out to the class was X percentage of projects never hit the timeline. And they actually, 60 at the time, 60%. I was shocked when the person said that. But we know a number of projects will not hit their deadlines. And so how do we scream at each other? No, we find other ways to deal with this. More screaming. So let's talk about this. So we've established a baseline as to what conflict is. An opposition and opposing of ideas or viewpoints. Not being able to understand each other. Sitting on the other side of the table and not being able to stand in the other or sit in the other person's shoes. So what are the different types of conflict? Well, you've got interpersonal conflict, which is the conflict between one-on-one persons with opposing ideas. Or, so really there are four types of conflict. Interpersonal, that's between people. Intrapersonal, which is a conflict with oneself. That's an interesting conflict. We all have those types of conflicts, and they tend to be conflicts of conscience or of morality. You know, we know what we think is right and wrong, and we're human. We're not always going to be going down the road of what we think is right or wrong. Sometimes we may err on the side of the wrong because, you know, we have these two fellas on our shoulders. Good angel, bad angel, whispering in our ears constantly. And so there's that internal conflict going on also. Intra-group conflict, where again, two opposing teams might be on a soccer pitch. And the two teams just can't get along with each other, and so perhaps an escalation beyond the soccer takes place. Maybe yelling, screaming, or worse. And intergroup, where you just have people from different countries also doing things culturally in ways that they're used to doing that contradict another person's culture. Okay, let's talk about strategies. Conflict resolution strategies. Well, the first point I want to stress with you in dealing with conflict is we must be able to manage our own emotions. That's the first thing. Rather than looking anywhere else, recognize the conflict, but let's first step, manage our own emotions. How do we do that? Very simple. First step, breathe. Just breathe. Somebody in front of you is saying something that you do not like. And there are many reasons for you not liking, whether it's a trigger from the past, or whether again it's an opposing idea that you just don't like the idea because that's just not how you were brought up. Breathe. Yoga. I love yoga, but that strong recommendation, breathe. Recognize your stress, your personal stress. Your heart might start racing. The blood might start pumping. Calm yourself down. That's the first step in conflict resolution, is managing your own self. Once we have control over our emotions and we recognize that, you know, whatever is happening here, it's not personal. This is nothing personal. It's just an opposing of ideas. Then we can go to the next stage of conflict resolution. So again, we may have reactions to the situation, which might be, we might get angry, or sometimes we might be hurt because of what's been said, or perhaps in a workplace environment, we strongly have a particular point of view that's being opposed by someone else, and the conflict will arise when we're not able to accept what the other person is saying. We're closed in on our own particular perspective, and we're locked down on that perspective. Does that make sense? And so what you want to do in a situation like that is hear or listen to what the other person has to say. Okay. Now, once we get a grip on our own emotions, we want to look around. Look for the non-verbal cues. Look to see what behavior is being displayed in front of you or around you. If you know, there are many different methods or ways that somebody can display that they don't want to communicate with you. And, you know, arms folded, or the body language is turned, the person turns on you, or they turn their back on you. It gives an impression that it tells you right away that that person does not want to listen to what you have to say. And that's another indication that there's conflict going on. So what do you want to do in a situation like that? Well, you want to give all parties that are experiencing the conflict a voice. You want to give each and everybody a voice in the discussion. And that voice must be, we practice listening non-judgmentally. So if whatever the person is saying, we try our best to not put our preconceived notions on what it is they have to say. Anybody here, any fans of The Office here? No, there's one episode, and this gentleman may be able to confirm this with me. There's one episode that's actually titled Conflict Management, and you can YouTube it because all of the episodes, or a big majority of the episodes of The Office are on YouTube. And Michael, the office manager, he's the arbiter in a conflict between Angela and Oscar. And is it just the two of us that are fans of The Office? Nobody else? Okay, so I won't go into the nitty-gritty of The Office, but just to say that the conflict had to do with a poster, and Angela had a poster with two babies playing saxophones, and the person on the other side, her co-worker, was deeply offended by this poster, and so there was this huge argument, and it had to go to the manager to be the arbiter. And what Michael is suggesting is similar to what we're suggesting here with this workshop. Listen to both sides non-judgmentally. Encourage all the participants to use the pronoun I. So therefore, it doesn't become an automatic judgment, as in, I feel. I feel like you're not hearing me. I personally do not like the poster because the image that it represents is hurtful to me. Encourage the use of the pronoun I, because it allows you and everybody else in the room to develop some empathy, because now we have a better understanding of where the person is coming from. Once all the parties involved in the conflict have a say in what's happening, and they have been allowed to express their emotions, as in using the pronoun I, or express how they feel, and it's all on the round table, and we realize, okay, we need to find a solution to the conflict. What's the next step? Let's get some ideas out there. Let's start brainstorming. Let's figure out how we can come up with a solution that will be where everybody could be happy with this solution. And one way to do that is to brainstorm. You know why brainstorming is so good? Because, and I encourage you in your meetings at work to encourage everybody to have a say in whatever project is going on, or whatever the situation is in your office or at home. Encourage everybody to have a say, because once everybody has a say and it's a plan is agreed upon, there's a particular sense of ownership that's passed on to all the participants in the discussion. In other words, everybody has a stake in the solution now. So you put all the ideas on the table and you attempt to come up with a solution that makes everybody happy. Bob White recently died. Anybody familiar with Bob White? He passed away this week. Canadian labor leader. He started up the Canadian Auto Workers Union. I know unions are passé, but still this man is relevant because he did so much for a lot of the benefits that workers have today would have been started off with these unions back in the 70s and 80s. And Bob White, in his negotiations with General Motors, there's a documentary out there called The Final Offer. And in that documentary, the deal almost collapsed until the very last minute when Bob White put forward a proposal where everybody gets a win. Now, the key to understanding this is, in a conflict resolution, not all the parties will get exactly what they want. But going back to ownership and a stake in ownership, it's important that the parties get at least something out of it. And so the brainstorming that takes place is that opportunity to put ideas on the table where the parties can have some stake in the solution. Now, we know, particularly with children, we may not always come to a win-win solution. Or, as a matter of fact, win-win, as that solution is called, where all the parties get a win in the conflict resolution, does not necessarily make everybody happy. So what's the next step? There is one final step in this process. We go to a mediator. And this is what couples do at times. When they cannot come to a win-win solution, they will step outside and go to a solution, to an arbiter, a final arbiter for some type of mediation. Now, I think I have a minute left. I would like two people in this room to come up and demonstrate what we have just spoken about. And I can set up the scenario. And the scenario could be, taking from Dee's speech, the two parties want to go out for lunch together. But they each cannot decide. They cannot decide on what restaurant. Each one wants to go to a different restaurant that they really like. So who wants to come up and show us how you can resolve finding a mutually agreed upon place to eat? Well, I'm going to have to call Elisa and Tom. So the scenario is, again, you're going out for lunch. If you want to go to your favorite restaurant, Tom wants to go to his favorite restaurant, and you have to find a solution because lunch is upon you and you have to come back to work. Right. Go for it. Let's see.
Tom, I feel that my stomach is telling me to eat Italian today.
That's a bit heavy. You know what? I've always been partial to Korean.
Korean?
And there's a really nice Korean just down the street. How about that?
What about we go to that Korean-Italian restaurant that's a bit further away?
Well, I mean,
I've never tried it out before, but
help us walk out.
Why not?
Sure, okay.
Excellent.
Who's going to pay?
Dee will.
Thank you both, thank you. I would have liked to have heard more of why you want to go to this restaurant or that restaurant, as in, I like Korean food because. So, but do we have any questions from the field? So you all can go out there and resolve the conflicts that you have with your children, your co-workers, your friends, your colleagues. Fantastic. And I pass back to you.